I've been working with a student regarding their research paper, and I wanted to make this video for them. And if she wants to share it with her classmates to see the kind of feedback I would give, she may do so, or she can keep it to herself. That is entirely her choice. It is her work. She's the one who reached out. She listened to her teacher and contacted me. All right, so a couple of things we're going to go through. I'm going to talk about uh, this is the paper, and this was the instructions that was given. So I've reviewed the rubric and I've looked over some things, and I'm going to critique things and give, how do I say this, feedback based on this rubric and things of that nature. All right. So as I go through, I'm going to make comments and make sure that everything makes sense. All right. So, uh, strong title, good name. This is all correct. Make sure it's the due date. Um, APA actually prefers PhD as the title of I don't or whatever the title is. They instead of professor. Um, you may want to look into that. There's always a page number. A lot of my students will sometimes write running headers. That's only for professional papers, not for student papers. You do not need a running header. All right, then we come down abstract. The first paragraph is not indented in an abstract. That is correct. All right. I would actually argue this abstract's a bit light. Abstracts typically are about 250 words. Um, this the simplest thing to do is to put it into, oh, I don't know Archana's AI. So I would have just put it into an AI and be like, I need to write a good abstract for this paper. It needs to be about 200 words, things like that. Because we have this, which is this research, this paper. I, I typically think of abstracts as following ordinals first, second, then next, after that, finally, in conclusion. You do have the finally here, all right? But that's how I think of them. All right. So let's get into the meaty stuff. So as I'm looking at your paper, first thing I notice, you clearly put real effort into it. Your title is focused, your paper looks organized and right way. I know you took it seriously, and that matters. You're not turning in something rushed. This is a good paper. So, um, the introduction. This is where I start making my first important revisions. You do a nice job of explaining why ethics matter in respiratory care. You bring up patient safety, privacy, um, and dignity and consent, and that tells me you understand the seriousness. That part works. But the rubric did not only want you to explain why ethics matters, it also wants you to define ethics. And so you're missing a definitional, a sentence of definition in context of ethics of respiratory care, all right, in the context. So you need to give that maybe a sentence around here, um, about a definition. By this, I mean, or by this, I would probably find a quote and just slap it in there. Uh, so right now you're moving into the importance before giving me a clean definition. So early introduction, I want one strong sentence that clearly defines ethics. That's all I want. All right. Um, I like that you're mentioning HIPAA and cultural sensitivity teamwork, patients' rights in emergency settings. It gives it range, but I also want you to preview the four core ethical principles more directly. Since the rubric specifically centers on autonomy, benefits, normalificence, and justice, I want to see those names clearly and early. Be as explicit as you can. Teachers, readers, reviewers, they have a checklist. They're going to tick, 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 tick those boxes, and you could just put those in there. Um, all right. That way, your reader knows immediately you're following the assignment structure and not just generally discussing ethics. You're going after the things that they want. All right. Now we're going to come down to the core ethical principles. All right. Let's see. Where are we at? Where are we at? Here we go. All right. You bring in this statement by AARC. I don't. So I'm an English doctor, not a medical doctor. So would you have called it ARC, or do you guys just say AARC? I know it's HIPAA, but I don't know if it's ARC. Uh, Here you've started talking about normalificence and beneficence and autonomy and justice. The problem is the ideas are missing. The problem is that the organization is just a little bit uneven. I want it to be cleaner. I should be able to see each principle in a very deliberate and explicit way. Definition, significance, respiratory care, examples of them. Right now, some of the principles, especially autonomy and justice, come through very clearly, but benefits feels more embedded inside the others. I would make it pop out, maybe make it its own little paragraph or area of it, like you did here for autonomy. All right, go ahead and separate them. Though here is a note: if you have lots of tiny little paragraphs, that screams AI to professors or readers. So instead of making it separate paragraphs, you can just start the sentences much like you did here, autonomy, and that way you can keep things more pulled out. So I love these examples that you're pulling in when we're talking about COVID and family members and stuff. And here this is your classmate. You were supposed to use your peers' work, and I like that. And I think it's an interesting twist. So kudos to your professor. Yeah, I'm kissing up. But one of the how to stress this to you guys. One of the weakest part of any research is the researcher. So removing yourself as much as you can is the important. Here you need to learn something called hedging, which seems, indicates, possibly shows, things like this. And it softens your claims, and it also shows that it's a signifier to the readers that you understand that this is you are not a peer-reviewed researcher on this, but this is your own insight, and that's just something I would say. Other things like here it says Alea also believes, additionally believes, sounds a little bit fancier, or additionally, Alea 2026 believes that autonomy is important, something like that. This is consistent with my discussion. Okay, you don't need to say my. You could just say the discussion. This is consistent with the earlier discussion, something like that. Try to remove yourself as much as possible from the papers. You don't have to get rid of personal pronouns unless your instructor, it's not on the rubric, but unless your instructor tells you don't. Your older ones may tell you that. However, so my PhD research, I analyzed academic research articles. Personal pronouns are completely acceptable. Referring to the yourself is fine. Just temper it. Only if it's absolutely necessary. It's not necessary to drop a my here. I would just drop a the with the earlier discussion, something like that. So the reason why this is a very important section of your paper, and why I think this is probably something that should be highlighted and punched up really carefully, is because you're going beyond just regurgitation and repetition of the things. You're actually applying, which is showing critical thinking, which is ticking boxes that professors love. But you need to unpack your ideas. You layer all of your ideas. Hold on. You've got a lot of stuff going on in a very short amount of time, and I would suggest unpacking it and adding sentences of explanations. All right, you've given a good definition, by the way, of autonomy. This is a fine definition. I also like how you. Oh, what was it? RT? Where did we do RT earlier? It's respiratory tech, but where did you do that? That was a. Yes, respiratory therapist. This is correct. All right. And then down here, you're talking about the RTs, which is correct. And you just keep it RTs. Now, APA stands if you move to in a larger paper or in a book, every new chapter or every major section, you would have to repeat the respiratory therapists or technician. I don't know what it was. I'm not that therapists. All right. You would need to repeat this same kind of RT thing, but here it's fine. All right, let's move to justice. Where's justice? Okay, so like I said, here you've done a good job of highlighting autonomy and justice. Do the same things for benefice. Pull it out, make it separate. In normal fits. All right, what was it? So I like this. This conflict. It shows thinking and acknowledging that it's not everything is not hunky dory. There are going to be some messy areas. This is correct. All right. So I would love it if you had maybe it can be a conclusion or maybe a little bit before the conclusion. I would want one direct sentence that tells me exactly how an RT puts justice into practice under pressure. How do they make the choice? You know, give me a pit moment. Do you guys watch The Pit? I haven't watched it. I don't really watch TV, but something like that where it's a high dramatic situation. Give me a scenario, and let me see it. All right, then we're going to come into the ethical dilemmas. So you went beyond the minimum of the rubric, which asks for 2 comment, and you gave more than 2. And that shows effort and serious engagement. You include mechanical ventilation decisions, smoking with home oxygen, vaccine refusal, unauthorized disclosure of protected health and information, and scarce resource allocation. So from a coverage standpoint, you're doing a lot. So my concern here is not quantity. My concern is that some of the cases are more developed than the others. If you're going to give me 5, I want all 5 to feel equally thorough. Right now, a few of them are stronger. I want you to get your first dilemma about mechanical ventilations. I see what you're trying to do. You're centering autonomy, right? You're centering it on autonomy and trying to respect previously expressed patients. Now, here's something. Do you know if you know what a Russian nesting doll is? It's a little doll that rests inside another doll inside of another doll, and da 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 da. You've got 4 aspects that you're supposed to cover, right? You're supposed to autonomy, Nephilim Bufis, and justice. Well, then I would say 4 ethical dilemmas, 1 for each would be my main suggestion. You have 5. Um, you're centering on autonomy here and trying to respect previously expressed patients' wishes. That's good, but this is also where I would challenge you a bit more. You say, I'm going to say it wrong. Extubation is necessary so the patient can regain consciousness and take part in the decision. That sounds ethically appealing, but you move past the clinical complexity too quickly. Is exhibition medically safe in this situation? Is it? Could it do more harm? I mean, you had already talked about the Hippocratic Oath and some of the other statements with HIPAA. So I'm wondering if that's something that you could address and make it more clear. Um, is there an advanced directive? Oh man, so my mom had surgery last week, brain surgery, and they kept asking her, does she have a advanced directive? And I had to explain to her that what that is, a DNR, and like things like that. And she's like, what do I have to do that? And she literally scribbled it on a post-it. It was very strange. Um, I digress. You would think like the hospitals would have them like I don't know. All right, so these are questions I would want you to wrestle with more carefully. Your ethical thinking is good here, but you need to be more careful not to present one solution as a simple. All right, there could be multiple situations and multiple solutions. Your second dilemma, smoking while using home oxygen, is practical and realistic. I can see this. I definitely can see this. My dad smoked, died of lung cancer. It was as he was dying, I asked the doctor, should he stop smoking? And the doctor was like, why? Why bother? Let him enjoy it. That always made me laugh. Um, and so I think this is a very practical, and I like it. I like that you identify the tension between the autonomy and normal offense, and that part works. But compared to your stronger section, this one feels more shorter and obvious. I mean, physically, it's shorter. Um, you basically identify the problem, mention smoking cessation education, move on. Dig in a little bit more here. Maybe a few sentences or a few explanations. For example, what is the responsibility if the patient still insists? What do you do when the patient says, "No, I'm going to keep smoking. I'm not quitting." What are you going to do? Uh, Things like that. How does documentation protect both the patient and provider? Think about that. It's not only you don't want to just CYA yourself, but also the with the way insurances are now, you also got to start thinking. I think part of ethically, as you're mentioning here, is about what the patient will need. So, all right, let's go to the vaccine refusal case. You gotta be. I mean, we all know that we have to be soft and delicate here. I can see you're trying to connect individual rights with institutional obligations. That is worthwhile, and you bring in autonomy, norviolence, and disease prevention, compliance, and exemption. It's fairly clear. What I would revise is the phrasing and the tone. Some sentences sound okay. So, for example, the supervisor needs to educate the employee on the options of medical. This reads very close to what they probably wrote, and there's no quotation marks, so that tells me this is supposed to be a paraphrase. However, the paraphrase doesn't match the tone of you. It matches the tone of the original paper. And when you paraphrase, you're supposed to make it sound in your words. That's what I would suggest. So, something to think about. I want to hear more of your ethical reason instead of what the hospital can enforce. Don't just say it has to do this. Explain why. All right. Just don't tell me what happens. Tell me why it is ethically complicated. All right. But I mean, look at this. This is a 2 paragraph, much bigger than your dilemma 2. So I would maybe even take out dilemma 2 if you have a word count constraint. I would maybe cut number 2. I like it. I like the case, but if you're not going to give it the same weight, it feels uneven, and bleh, don't like that. So now we're at HIPAA. Where are we? We're at HIPAA. Where am I? Yeah. Yes. All right. So it is in the relevant section. I don't think it's necessary. You could have cut it. I like you identify the legal and ethical harm here. So this one's better than the smoking one. You also recognize the emotional harm to the family, which strengthens the ethical analysis. I would say it's a little bit. You're focused on the end result and not the journey to get to it. And you need to get to the. I would probably pad out a few sentences in here discussing the family or how it came to this issue before just dropping off the conclusion. So either make this one longer or cut it. All right, so scarce resources. This is the COVID one. Yeah. This was the best part of the paper. This is where you're writing, and I can tell, especially from your earlier comments and your work with Alea, this is something that speaks to you, and it matters to you, and it affected you, and I can appreciate it, and it comes through. Uh, your writing is more layered. You bring in justice, normothance, and beneficence, risk of discrimination, family pressure, triage, objectivity, ugh, and compassionate communication. This is the kind of dilemma that lets you show ethical complexity. I would probably say this is probably the strongest case analysis because you're doing more than identifying principles. You're showing how these ethical decisions has to function under real pressure. This is very good. I like. All right. So this is the kind of area that I would like. The tone is good. The writing is clear. Not a lot of issues with your. You have the journey and it's weighted. I mean, you can just look at it. Just looking at it, it is a chunk. It is a chunk. The only Englishy thing is I would maybe separate it into two paragraphs. Um, Maybe here you could make it a new paragraph, but that's up to you. It isn't necessary, but it may work better. Take a look at it, see if it reads and flows better. All right, ethical leadership. There we go. You have the general concept of ethical leadership. You talk about trust, accountability, transparency, questioning unsafe orders, and supporting communication. All of these are good ideas. But this is where I want you to become even more respiratory care specific, as it tells you to do in the rubric, as it tells you to do. So we've got all of these kinds of things about here. You need to apply these parts to this section, okay? A lot of this sounds like pamphlets that they give out from the hospital, and I need you to have it grounded as a practitioner yourself. So make it very specific to your profession. Show me what ethical leadership looks like during rounds, during a ventilator disagreement, during patient education, or during a code situation, right? Bring it closer to the actual work. Don't live in a world of what ifs. Give me real concrete examples that RTs will have to face. I do like your advocacy example involving ventilators. Setting not matching blood gas levels. This is specific and it shows me you know what you're talking about. So you'll hear English teachers like me talk about ethos, logos, and pathos. Logos is your street cred, and this is where you can show your credibility as an RT technician, and I think that's very important. All right. Your point about advocating for language translation services is also important. These show real moments and really connect it to real issues that RTs will have. However, I would just tell you to make sure that every paragraph in this section has the same level of practical grounding. Make sure that it's balanced. If you're arguing something that needs to happen, make sure that you have evidence, support, and quotes for each of them. So, like, for example, there's no citations here. Something to think about. All right. Ooh, cultural awareness. Woohoo! This is very thoughtful. You do you do not treat culture as a throwaway idea. You discuss religious and medications, vaccines, and of life discussions. You talk about these kinds of things, and I appreciate that. You're showing that culture influences trust, communication, and choices. I especially like that you may avoid making assumptions about patients and instead emphasize. One of the things I hate, so I was working a lot with hospitals in Taiwan, and they were working with indigenous workers from Indonesia. Indonesia is a Islamic country, and so they were saying things like in their materials, like if the patient is Muslim, if it's a male patient, they cannot be touched, or if it's a female patient, they cannot be touched by a male doctor. And no, yeah, I mean, Muslims, it's preferred, but most patients, if it means, doing something haram or forbidden versus living, they're going to choose. So I like the fact that you balanced that out. And it makes it feel reflective and mature. However, if I were making one revision suggestion here, I would say that you could connect this section even more clearly back to specific ethical principles you're already applying. Bring back autonomy, bring back justice, and bring back benefits. Naming those directly into the sections that you think, like benefits, justice, autonomy. If you can do this, by saying, like, as previously discussed in the autonomy section, blah, 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 it will make your paper that much stronger. All right. All right. So here we go. Where are we at? Interdisciplinary collaboration. All right. I need to highlight something that if you read the rubric, you do mention communication, but I need you to be more specific because, hold on. What did I say? Okay, the rubric specifically asks for collaboration and at least one communication strategy for patient centered solutions. I'm pretty sure. Collaboration. What is it? Close that off. Cultural differences, you did that. Okay. A learning outcome, effective communications with to reserve an ethical issue. Where was the collaboration? Could have sworn I saw that. Oh, so I'm the designated one. Oh, you get full marks. Yay! You did that. Good. Good. Okay. This is where you need to do it. I need you to make it more clear. More clear. Clearer. Sorry. Uh, I want you to be more specific. Name the communication strategy. Just find a good communication strategy. For example, are you talking about speaking up during rounds, structured reporting, clarification of orders, direct interdisciplinary consultation? Right now, this is a good section, but it could be more precise. Obviously, this is your last section and you're tired, and I get that. But for the rubric, just from the rubric standpoint. All right. So now in your conclusion, I see you're trying to do the two things the rubric wants, which is summarize. You do both. You revisit the HIPAA and ARC standards. I'm calling it ARC. You tell me later if I'm wrong. Objectivity, privacy, autonomy, and justice on your own. So it does meet the assignment goals. What I would revise is repetition. Stop saying the exact same. It feels a bit copy pasted. All right. Also, once again, as I continue, it turns it into more of like it reads more like a diary entry. You know, as a new RT on a journey to becoming, as a student becoming, you can do lots of things instead of saying I is what I would say here. Synthesize more, repeat less. I want the conclusion to feel like a strong final insight, not a restatement. Okay, it is a reflective tone, which is good. All right, so now let's get into the references. So, excellent, 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 excellent. Okay, do that right. I'm singing the alphabet song in my head to make sure because I always get confused with J and G. All right. So this is just a point of if you were in my class, you would actually lose points here. I would recommend you have a 13 page, 14 page, 13 page, 12 page paper. I would say you would need a minimum of 12 sources. All right. So you're a couple of sources light. I like to have two sources per. Other things would be making sure that they're all top level sources. BMJ is great. Societies is okay. Harvard Business Review is not a good source. Yeah, it has the H bomb, but it's not a good source if you were with me. Videos, I don't know. So I would be careful with some of these. Now, here you're using your classmates' work, which was a requirement, and I appreciate that. Um, and this is done correctly, but you need to make it more of a little bit more saucy. You need to put some respect on that name up in the paper, and treat it like a credible source is what I would say. So APA formatting here is all very good. I just have problems with some of your sources in the quality of sources. Um, So when I looked at this one, it said 2013, and this one says 2021. So be very careful. Oh, it was revised. I see. Revised 1021. Okay, good, 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 good. Okay. All right. So those are things. I didn't come across any major grammar errors. I would run it through Grammarly. I'll do that in a minute and send that to you as a separate paper. But I wanted to go through your paper and give you some feedback and some ideas of the kind of things based on the rubric your teacher may be looking for, things I would look for, and ways to make it even better. Really good paper. You're very close to almost having a publishable paper. Something to think about. All right. Hope this helps.